here, I want to do a little bit of a mic check. Everybody here okay? Not too, okay, good. I got lots of big thumbs up. If you ever can't hear or there's a problem, wave or do something and I'll try to make adjustments. All right. So I'll maybe skip a few things because we lost about, gosh, at least 20 minutes there, maybe more, right? So I will do what I can to make up some time here. But what I wanted to talk to you today is about three things. First of all, just having plants not only stay alive, which is a good goal, but thrive. And I have some tips to share with you on that. I know we probably have a broad range of gardeners here, from maybe some newer gardeners who are getting into it to some very experienced gardeners, so hopefully there's something for everyone to take away. And then we're going to spend a fair amount of time on the combinations of colors and plants and specific varieties and cultivars, so we're going to get into it. Okay. So, just a little background on me and how I got into this. You heard from my bio that I most of my career was in high tech, although it didn't look like it from this little fiasco there. But so I was at Intel for 28 years, and I retired as a vice president there. It was an intense working environment, spectacular career, super grateful for that. But my passionate hobby on the side was always gardening for a long time, decades. And this is my little garden in 2020. You can see I was a new gardener, and there's the dead plant there, and it's a tiny garden in California, and every year, or not every year, whenever we would move, we would get a little bit bigger garden and a little bit bigger garden. And who has been out to visit Lush Perennials? Yay, so many people. All right, so for you that haven't, I'm going to see if I can entice you with the next photo. And that's the garden now. So I love my garden. It's my baby. I know every plant that's in it. So it had been a dream of mine to build an English garden from scratch. You know, usually if you have a house or an apartment or a condo, whatever, you inherit people's whatever they did before you, the trees, the shrubs, you don't want to take them all out, but we bought the land, 37 beautiful acres overlooking the mountains about 20 minutes northwest of Portland up on Skyline. And so it's 37 acres of beautiful native forest, and there's 2 acres of landscaped English gardens, and over 8,000 blooming plants in the garden. And as you heard a little bit from the bio, my background, the last 10 years, I retired 10 years ago, but even before that, I love learning more about plants and gardens and horticulture, and I found lots of different ways of, whether it's, college classes or most, a lot of just try and fail or whatever it is. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned was over the past, 5 to 6 years, we've grown over 25,000 nursery plants, and killed some, and all the things that you do, right? But you learn a lot of lessons from that. And I want to share a little bit of some tips that maybe even 8 years ago I didn't know about gardening, even though I thought I was a pretty good gardener even then. But gardening is humbling, and you always get to learn more, which is what's great about it. So after I retired from Intel, this pretty glass house, greenhouse, was my retirement present to myself. And I loved to propagate plants. I had been doing it before on little tiny plastic greenhouses and things like that. But I got to do a lot more in this one. I propagated a lot and started selling them like at a farmer's market, things like that. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now this is what we are. We specialize in long blooming perennials. I decided to focus on a particular thing, and that's what we're focused on. Many of these varieties bloom more than 4 months. Now we're up to over 300 varieties. I started out with just a few. And as you saw, we do those steel plant supports, and my husband makes those. So we the whole family's in this thing. And our uniqueness and what we try to give back is that we open our garden to the public. And so that's really fun. You can see the mature plants full size, and then if you like those combinations of plants, you can see them in the garden. And we do a lot of propagation, most of it. I love propagation. Most of our plants are propagated from our garden. I'm very excited. In fact, I have a big shout out, thank you to Hardy Plant Society, because they kind of connected us with Garden Gate. the latest issue of Garden Gate magazine. That refers to our garden on the cover. It says, "Tour a garden with never quit color," and it's a 12-page spread of our garden. Yeah, it's incredible. I was so grateful to have it. It's a really fun thing to have gotten to do. So we've kind of been busy the last 5 years, and as I said, we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about gardening and keeping plants healthy and that kind of thing. And one of the things we do, and it's part of the focus of this talk, is most of our planting is done in fall. And there's a good reason for that. And there's like 5 listed here, but for me at least, it's the first one and the last one that make the biggest difference. The soil is warm from the summer. The roots love that. They grow out and get healthier and stronger. They just grow faster and better in warm soil. And that means the top growth grows more, they get more established. So that's the number one reason. And there's other reasons. I have more time, there's some rain, we have a long growing season. But also you can see where the plants are. You ever planted a plant in spring and then dug up something that was already there? Yeah. We've all done that. So, and the last thing is plant sales. There are so many great deals right now. For our nursery here, back up at the nursery and here at this PlantFest, everything is on sale. Lots of vendors are doing that. You can get great deals, so you can, have all these advantages, but get some good deals. Okay, now it's time for a little quiz. So, when we planted our greenhouse garden, it was May of 2020. And so we planted some trees and shrubs and things, but mostly 1-gallon perennials. How long did it take to get to that? 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. Okay, so everybody knows the kind of thing about perennials. First year is sleep, second year, creep, third year, leap. Exactly. It takes 2 to 3 years for them to get to mature. 6 weeks. Now I'm going to share some tips on how we get there. But I am going to give you one more example of planting in the fall. So we have a big front garden, and we had a lot of lawn there. We took all that lawn out. And in fall of 21, we planted trees and shrubs. It's 160 feet by 80 feet or something. That's the size of the space. So there's a lot of plants in there. And fall of 22, we were going to plant the perennials. So all that bare dirt there is where all the mostly 1-gallon perennials were going to go. And that's it in July. So got established, grew over had strong root systems, what I just talked about. Grew nicely over the summer, and then by July it looked like this. Okay, now let's talk about a few tips on getting there. Okay, these are the 7 things that we do in terms of planting, and it's not magic, right? It's not. But many of you know and do every single one of these. But after talking to thousands, we've had thousands and thousands of visitors up at our nursery and garden, and talking to so many customers, there's a few things that I know that are challenging. So, and I'm going to kind of hit this quick because of our time constraint, but temperature and light is not something you can totally control unless you take a tree down or something. So, we try to put the right plant in the right place, sun for sun, shade for shade. I will say on the zone 8 comment, we're zone 8, so zone 8 or less, so it's hardy here from a cold standpoint. I am seeing more and more plants that are not clearly labeled. And I do some landscape and design and consulting now, and I had a client that said, I bought all these salvias online. And I said, great, so we'll use those. They all turned out to be annuals. So watch for this. There's even dahlias coming out now. I've just seen this recently. They're zone 9. Yeah, so you have to be watchful and look at those tags. So just a little hint on that. Our big focus is around soil. We do a lot of soil amendments. If it's a new bed, we'll take 4 inches of compost, till it into 12. That helped a lot with those beds. I wouldn't call the soil fluffy per se, but you're feeding the soil when you add the compost to our typical clay soil. And even when we plant, we add some compost. The watering and fertilizing are what I'm going to show you on the next slide as some tips where I see and hear from customers a lot of questions and a lot of challenges about it. So, 3 things. planting. We dig the planting hole wide, but not deep. And that's something, you know, all three of these things I learned in when I took the Master Gardener course 10 years ago. It was a spectacular course. And I was doing all three of these, I would say, wrong, or at least not like this anyway. But the wide hole lets the roots go out. It's turned over the soil, it's a little more loose. I used to dig my hole deep so the roots would go straight down. And so this helps a lot, and plant it a little high. We mix compost and sometimes gravel. Gravel is for things that need good drainage. It's got to be 9:10, clean gravel. But I want to really spend a second on watering, because I get this question so often you can't even imagine. So I was at a client's house. We had done the design for their front garden, and they had a bunch of plants, like 50 plants that were getting moved. So they had some existing plants that had incorporated into the design, added a couple hundred more, and then so we had to move some plants. Dug this one up. Can you see this plant, right? Even in the back? So we dug it out. It's still in the shape of the pot, right? So its roots didn't go out at all. The top of it is sopping wet, drowning, and the bottom is bone dry. And every plant was like this. And my client, she is the sweetest woman, and so many people I talked to water just like this. So what was happening is she was watering maybe 20 minutes. She had a sprinkler system, a spray, whether it's drip or whatever. But if you don't water to get deep, 12 inches deep, then the roots they'll kind of stay on the surface, they'll stay more shallow, eventually they'll kill the plant. It may take time, but it'll kill the plant. We water at our place, we have spray and we have drip. The spray is often over an hour, but twice a week in the heat of summer. Wow. 90 degrees, unless I have new plants or maybe it's over 100, would I water a third time that week. Because the roots also want oxygen and air. So I don't want to drown them, but I need that water to go deep. And then the plant's roots grow deep and wide, it's resilient, and when the top dries out, it doesn't drop dead. So we water once or twice a week and very, very deeply. And then last quick comment on fertilizer. We fertilize once a season. Okay, things like roses we might do again, some heavy feeders. But generally the entire landscape is once in April, slow release. So little pellets so you don't get fertilizer that runs off everywhere. It just feeds the plant slowly. But we use a high nitrogen, low phosphorus mix because the soils in our area have high phosphorus. But yet in the stores, you'll often see these pretty packages that say blossom booster. And who doesn't want to boost their blossoms? So you want to buy that pretty colorful package. It looks so good. There is a fantastic article by Linda Chalker-Scott. Has anybody read some of hers? She's a professor from Washington State University on garden myths. And she has a great one on the myth of high phosphorus fertilizer for boosting roots and blooms. And I won't spend too much more time. If you have more questions, you're welcome to ask me out at our booth. But our soils here typically have a lot of phosphorus. If you add more, it will lock up the other nutrients and the plant won't get hardly any of the nutrients it needs. So we use high nitrogen, low phosphorus, medium potassium. Very similar to the Portland Rose Society's fertilizer mix, which is a great mix to get also. Okay. And then lastly, on taking care of the garden and handling challenges and making it thrive, right? So making it thrive was all about planting it the right way, getting that compost tilled in, watering it deeply, make those roots work for it and go wide, fertilizing correctly. But my biggest problem still remains the wet winter soil. I love Mediterranean kind of plants. I love some of the drought-tolerant plants and things that hate having their roots wet or their tubers wet. Dahlias, penstemon, Agastaki, hummingbird mint, things like that are some of my favorites. And they hate winter wet. We do two things. One, we mix gravel and compost into the planting hole. Like half of the hole is now gravel and compost, the other half is our clay soil. And the other thing we do is we leave the foliage up, especially if something like a penstemon, it will actually hold its foliage pretty well. You can see that's in December. By January, it might look like on the right, like a little ratty, but it just helps the roots not get so wet. And some years when it's mild, our penstemon were green almost all winter last winter. And for dahlias, and for many of these, we'll also put a pile of gravel on top, just to help, a little mound. It'll just shed some of the water off. And it doesn't solve all the clay soil things, but it helps. We went from losing about half our dahlias every winter to about 80 to 90% come back. And then I don't dig them. I never dig them. We just leave them in and they come back. Okay, so now let's look at the plants and color and all that kind of thing. And I wanted to start with a mention on how I choose perennials for my garden and for what I sell in the nursery. So I look at a couple of things. I look certainly if the plant, is it long blooming, is it healthy, is it disease resistant, and no offense to people who love lupin. I mean, there's nothing like a field of lupin when it's in bloom. It is stunning. But I use it as an example because if you're going to pick between two of these purple flowered plants, it's much more dramatic and stunning, but it doesn't bloom long and it gets powdery mildew like crazy right after it blooms. So I don't use it. So I take some of those things into consideration. But the thing I wanted to leave you, the reason I put this slide in, is one of the things that fascinates me so much, still does, about looking at plants. I just geek out on researching what variety, what genus, what cultivar is long blooming, or has this amazing color, or things like that. Is that, you know, this comment on the bottom, this a rose is a rose is a rose. Does anybody know who that quote's from? Gertrude Stein, that's right. Pretty famous quote. And basically it means it is what it is. A rose is a rose. But that's actually not true about a lot of genus of plants. If you look at geraniums, for example, there's over 400 varieties. Some are annual, some are perennial. Some bloom a long time, some don't. This geum, one of my, it's new for our nursery now, in a couple of years, is Coral Tempest. It is stunning. There are over 80 varieties of geum. Some are evergreen, some are deciduous, some bloom a long time, some bloom a short time. So digging down to understand what each one does, I've had customers tell me, oh, I hate geum. It's that little yellow flower that goes all over your garden. That's our native geum, and it very misbehaves in the landscape. But these are much larger flowers, long blooming. So it's worth looking into and choosing that cultivar carefully. And that's what's really fun, I think, is looking into that kind of thing. And I do a lot of that. That keeps me busy over the winter. And then the other thing I look at, and there's a lot of things as you put perennial combinations together. So now we're going to look at specific varieties and cultivars and how we put them together, is there's a lot to it. There's trees, there's shrubs, there's the texture of the leaves. I'm going to focus on only two things for this talk, and that is when I put a combination together, I look at two main things in terms of the flowers themselves, the shape and the color. And you can make, I think, beautiful combinations if you take these simple things in mind. Big round flower, dahlia, peony, rose. The thing you would say, oh, I love that rose. I love that peony. You would not say that about the geranium single flower. I mean, I love it, believe me, but it's not a gasp kind of a flower, but that makes a stunning statement. Vertical spire, like the hummingbird mint right there, Augustaki Blue Fortune. And things like the geranium roseanne, which I do think is like the best hardy geranium there is. It's amazing, blooms 5 months, makes a sweep of color. And it's not exactly a shape, excuse me, but what I mean by a sweep of color, if you took a paintbrush and you swept it across the canvas, purple or coral or pink, that effect in the garden. Just a mass of color, a big round flower, and a vertical shape. It's very beautiful. And then layer in the colors. Maybe mix a hot color like a coral or a pink, a cool color like a blue or an orange, and then different colors, whites and burgundies as accents. Okay. Now we're going to go through the season and gallop through and see what we can get to bloom as long as possible and have color from March all the way through November. So in our garden, we start with bulbs, of course, because there's not a lot of perennials going on in that time frame. Tulips that get eaten by the squirrels, but a lot of daffodils and hyacinths and things like that, magnolia trees. But then we start to get into late March and early April, and now we have some possibilities with some perennials. And they are some of the ones you know well. For big brown flowers, we might have camellias, we have hellebores. I don't know if you've ever seen the glossy magazine ads in Holland where they do the river of flowers and blue. So I really wanted to do that. So I planted 2,000 grape hyacinths one year. It's the best my quads ever looked. And then some beautiful Virginia next to it, pink dragonfly. So this is in the front garden. That's the same garden I showed you that we planted in fall, and then you saw the midsummer. So now this is early in the season. So you have this on the left, this on the right. And I just wanted to point out a cool plant I found, or discovered for me. You may have heard of it, but a few years ago, I got to do a master class training in England with Fergus Garrett. It was a week-long thing, and it was an amazing course. I learned a ton, but from their gardens, I got a lot of cool plant ideas. This is a euphorbia for shade. Most euphorbias are full sun. It's a great plant for dry shade. It looks like a tiny forest. Isn't it cute? And then it has these chartreuse flowers in spring. Really has done well in my garden. Now you get into April. And I have my 3 kind of go-to perennials that bloom the earliest. And this kind of forms my spring combos in just different pockets around the garden in the back and in the front. And they are geum. And one thing I love so much about geums are my best-selling plant, actually, at the nursery. It's amazing. Because, I talk about it a lot probably, but also, it's evergreen. So I almost use it like a ground cover. That's the leaves in the lower right corner. It blooms a long time, like 6 months. 4 months very heavy and then sporadic. And it starts early. This is how I pull in my color combinations into April, is because geums start blooming in April. They're beautiful. So this one's totally tangerine, a great orange to go with pink. Not all oranges look good with pink, but I think it's beautiful. Combine it with an evergreen wallflower, bull's mauve, an old variety, and then a Jupiter's beard, which you see a lot more in England than you do here, but it blooms for 5 months. And that one tends to start in May. And then you have this nice combination, and then we add to it. Okay. So so I've been increasingly adding geums to bring more color in earlier on. So this is the back garden, part of the back garden. Geum totally tangerine, geum coral tempest, that's that deep color one I showed you. And so I've got these sweep of hot colors here. And so I told you earlier I like to mix the hot colors with the cool colors, so you'll see where the purple comes in a second. But as I go through some of these different time frames, I have it didn't build. Here we go. I have them in kind of categories. So for example, May, I've got my long bloomers. They started mostly in April, a little bit in May. And then what we have in the garden are the trees and shrubs. And I love having color at height, right? So not just everything that's like 2 feet tall and really nice colors, but of course rhododendrons are blooming, that watermelon rhododendron in the back, so you get something about 4 feet tall. The magnolia tree had just bloomed before this in yellow, and we have a kind of a pink one on the other side. So you have trees and shrubs. The wisteria is blooming. And then you have what I'd call seasonal. So these are going to kind of come and go. They're fun accents. I don't put lots of them in the garden because they don't bloom a long time, but iris, foxglove, allium, beautiful touches, great shapes, and then things called fun surprises. So I'm going to show you the rheum a little later when we can do a full color picture, because it had finished blooming here. It's that spire in the center that looks red, but it was much more vibrant. A 6-foot flower spike in the middle of May. It's a fun surprise that comes and goes, but it's a beautiful plant. This is the other side of the wisteria. So then you step back and you saw the sweep of geums on one side, and then this dark, this beautiful velvety purple bearded iris, and the alliums, etc. That is a reblooming iris. It blooms in May, and it's blooming now. Second time in September. So that's back to find those plants. Not every bearded iris does that, but some do. And you find the varieties that do these fun and interesting things. So let me give you a sense for kind of how the garden moves over time using the example of that garden I just showed you. So this is another view of that same garden. There's the alliums and the iris kind of in the back. So this bed is maybe 30 feet long right here. It's not that long. And maybe 10 feet deep. And so it's got geums, it's May, it's got geums, the geranium roseanne are starting to bloom. It's got Jupiter's beard, there's some other things around it. And in September, October, it looks like this, same bed. Now on right here, you see the purple, that's geranium roseanne. It's been growing heavily since May. You've got a pop of white with Gara sparkle white. But what you didn't see in this photo, because they were short, the dahlias, they hadn't even come up yet probably at that point. Dahlias, hydrangeas, so just using every single thing to create these color palettes of just vivid, vibrant colors. Okay, now we're moving later into May, and it's getting into early June, and now we're galloping along, because there's a lot more things that are blooming now. And so I'm going to show you a few of my favorite varieties of some of these. So again, the same categories, right? So we have this whole set of them that are long blooming. So it could be geraniums, it could be yarrow. That one on the upper right there is yarrow raspberry. It's a beautiful deep color. Catmint, sweet william, salvia, there's all kinds of beautiful things to mix and match. But this is a great example of using burgundy. So this sweet william is Dianthus sooty, my favorite one. And see how there's the pink in the middle, that's the Jupiter's beard. And it would be beautiful on its own, but the burgundy brings out the vividness of the pink. So here's the specific varieties. This is yarrow raspberry here, my favorite yarrow. Dianthus sooty up here, loved by pollinators. I often get the question, which plants do you have that are the pollinators like? But I do long blooming flowering plants, so most of them. And that's a beautiful swallowtail there. This poppy is a fun surprise. So in the middle of May, and all these other plants I showed you are long blooming and they're doing their thing. And this poppy comes along, not for very, they don't bloom that long, oriental poppies, but it's this big. It's a huge flower with a dark eye, and that's Princess Victoria Louise. And what a great contrast with the deep raspberries and some of the other things. And then this photo just shows you, I have lots of different types of plants, and some are easy to care and some are difficult, but this shows them how beautiful in mass plants can be. So a beautiful sweep of a cool color, geranium roseanne there in purple, and our chicken, Reba, who likes to photobomb. The clean crispness of some grass, that cool sweep of purple, but behind it is this riot of color. Roses and dahlias, rhododendrons, lilies, all kinds of things. And that makes a beautiful kind of quiet front border, and it brings it all together in a way that I don't think it could if it was just a riot of color. It's that quiet front that really brings the combination together. Everybody don't you love peonies? Yeah. If they bloomed longer, probably that's all that would be in our garden. So they bloom beautifully in May, and I just wanted to show you a combination of a color on color. So this is a coral sunset peony, but the foxglove behind it is called apricot beauty. And if you saw this in person, this is the first time we did this combo this year. So this picture was taken in May of this year. And the spires of foxglove, not in the standard purple, but in this beautiful, just apricot, kind of a light coral. It takes the deepness of the peony, but to its lightest tone, and it was just a great contrast. Spires and round flowers, and the color combo was one of my favorites. It's fun ways to play with color. Okay, so now we're getting farther into the summer. It's July, maybe early August, and now a whole host of other things have started to bloom. By the way, this is when all of these things start to bloom. The dahlias, the penstemon, and the salvia, and you have this freshness. Sometimes that's when we take the opportunity to give our spring bloomers ginormous haircuts. instead of cutting off each spent bloom, because you have to deadhead them to keep these kinds of color shows going, right? We just take them and shear them in half, like down to 6 inches or a foot tall. And then within 3 to 4 weeks, they'll be blooming again, but these guys are stealing the show anyway. So sometimes we do that to save time. So for summer, we'll look at a few. There's so many varieties of dahlias that are amazing. I have a few specific ones, but I want to show you a few penstemon, some hummingbird mint, my favorite Peruvian lilies. So we're going to get into a few varieties that really bring some interest into the summer garden. Okay, so Alstroemeria, or Peruvian lily. I used to think of these as the Safeway flower, right? You go, they're very cheap. They're the cheapest cut flowers you can buy at Safeway. And I thought, oh, boring, common, I would never have it in my garden. Until I went to the Mendocino Botanical Garden on the coast of Northern California. It is a stunning garden, right overlooking the ocean. What a property. And it had sweeps of tall Alstroemerias. You see a lot of the short ones in nurseries, and that's because a lot of people have smaller gardens, and totally understandable. A lot of the breeding is focused on that. But I love the tall ones, and this one here is called apricot. And you see it creates this sweep of peach right there, and tall, and it blooms for like 4 or 5 months. It just keeps going and going. And I love that lighter color, because around it are very deep colors. And if all I did was the deeper, darker colors, I think it would be a bit too heavy. So the Dahlia Holly Hill Black Beauty, this beautiful burgundy, there's roses, other pink dahlias, penstemon ruby, a beautiful penstemon. But this Alstroemeria apricot has a stripe of raspberry in it. So it's not just the light peachy pink. And that stripe of raspberry, when you're right in front of it, really picks up the colors from the penstemon, and there's a rose behind it that's a very similar one. So it makes this combination really come together. Second variety of Alstroemeria I love is called peachy orange. And this one is a darker color, more orange than the prior one. And I love it with Salvia amistad, that royal purple. And I show you here because it's been blooming since June here. I think the salvia started maybe in July. And that picture was taken in November. Still going. So you can really extend the season with some of these that they'll just keep going. Keep deadheading them, and they'll keep going. Okay. Hummingbird mint, Augustaki. Yet one more plant that also loves good drainage, like I talked about before. You can see I love those that love that. I have a few different varieties in the garden. Blue Fortune is an old one. It's been around a long time. But we have it a lot in the garden because it's, for me, one of the more hardy Augustakis that there is. And I love the purple spires because I have a lot of deep, dark colored dahlias and roses. So having a light purple as contrast is really, really pretty for that. And the second one is called Apache Sunset. It has a completely different leaf than most of the Augustakis. It's kind of a gray, thin leaf. Both are very deer resistant. And this creates their spires like the other Augustaki, but it also creates this kind of cloud of coral. And so it's paired here with Dahlia Intrigue, again to play off the colors of each, but very different forms and shapes. And with the castor bean, New Zealand purple behind it, with its huge exotic burgundy leaves. So a kind of a simple combination, just a few things there, but it creates a really nice impact, I think. So clouds of coral, and that's a shorter Augustaki. The Apache Sunset's maybe a couple feet tall, and I use Blue Fortune when I need something a little taller, more like 3 feet tall. Penstemon, and a few other things in this. So this one is Jeff Hamilton, great variety. I actually got some penstemon, some clematis, some hydrangeas and things from Joy Creek Nursery when they were closing down their retail operations. They had some amazing, amazing varieties and fuchsias. You'll see those in a minute. But this Jeff Hamilton is a color that is almost indescribable. It is just this fuchsia, bright color. We can see it from inside the house like a little beacon out there. And I love how you can cool it off with geranium roseanne behind it and spires of salvia indigo spires, kind of like a wild hair day, but they're more like 4 or 5 feet tall, so they give you some height at the back. And the right is to show an example of, I don't know, I call it a color echo. So there's lots of things going around it, and this is the front garden, the same garden you saw that I said we planted in the fall a few years ago. On the left side of the path, on the right side of the path, this color echo is surrounded by some purples and some burgundies and all kinds of things, but that one space has my favorite hydrangea. It's got a huge dark pink flower that fades to pistachio, kind of light pink in the summer, so not to brown, which is nice, and then deepens in the fall to dark, dark pink. So it really gives you a June to October, November season. Persicaria firetail in the middle, so spires of that same tone of raspberry pink. And then the sweep of yarrow raspberry to give you a sweep of color and it's kind of a different shape. So just a fun use of the same color being echoed on different textures and forms. And then just a few to throw in, and then I want to talk a little more about how we're going to get into fuchsias. This lower left one is Lavatera burgundy wine, a tree mallow. So it's kind of a woody shrub, semi-evergreen. So a nice statement, you kind of leave it alone, it does its thing. But I like that it's a darker pink rather than some of the white ones you see. And the tall verbascum mullein wedding candles is a really pretty vertical accent. And the upper right is just a fun coreopsis for summer. There's a lot of different beautiful ones, but often you see these in yellow. I love Ruby Frost with the burgundy flower and edged and kind of iced with white. And then, you know, hummingbirds are all over the place. They especially love the Phygelius, which is called Cape fuchsia, which is not a fuchsia, it's a Phygelius. Also, it's kind of a semi-woody shrub. And I use the Lavatera shrubs and the Phygelius shrubs as some nice, long-blooming, easy care accents. All right, I know we have 2 minutes and you want to go shopping. So, all right, so we're going to wrap up. We're going to go zip through some fuchsias so we can get you out to the plant show. This gives an example of there's still such vibrant color in the garden, even through October, November, which is why we're still planting like crazy in our place and doing all kinds of fun new beds, but you get a lot of deep colors. This fuchsia on the right is DeBron's Black Cherry, and it picks up beautifully that glowing embers hydrangea that's now a deeper color. And that photo was taken in November, so it's still getting some great color. A few of my favorite fuchsias. This one is fuchsia bud cole. You see the close-up of it on the right. It's the fastest growing fuchsia I have. In a couple of years, it gets to be about 4 feet tall, so it's a taller fuchsia, but covered in tiny flowers, but just covered in them. And it just makes a great accent of lots of tiny flowers next to big round flowers like Dahlia Nicholas here in this beautiful peachy color. And we sweep through the middle with Aster Purple Dome. My favorite aster. Doesn't flop, stays upright, has that beautiful deep, deep purple. And then lastly on fuchsia, a few more to tempt you. Voltaire here, it's pretty readily available there in the pot. Celia Smedley has a really striking color because the center here, the corolla, the bell there, is this dark coral with a light sepal with little touches of that coral on it. 2 rare fuchsias, I did get these from Joy Creek. Rossi Blackie up on top. It's only 1 foot by 1 foot. And by the way, all these fuchsias are hardy fuchsias. These aren't annual fuchsias, but that's my hand. It's got this like almost ballerina tutu-like ruffled corolla in smoky plum and the most impossibly bright raspberry pink on top. And Carmel blue just speaks for itself. It's this really pretty vivid kind of purple blue. And then on the right is Fuchsia Grona Khan's Glory, or Grona, you have to like gutter, it's Dutch. So I can't pronounce it, but also a beauty there with our duck photobombing, but beautiful in pots and in the ground. Okay, I'm sorry I'm rushing, but we had our time cut short there, so I'll try to wrap us up a bit. I've got a couple more, let's see. Oh yeah, just a couple more slides. So I'll try to whiz you through these so you can see the plants and then go buy stuff. Okay. I mentioned before I love using burgundy. It just adds depth in the garden. It makes the other colors pop. Sometimes I do that with leaves, sometimes with flowers. So for leaves, penstemon, onyx, and pearls is really beautiful. There's a number of dark-leaved penstemons, but they always turn green so fast, I find. In spring they're dark, and then they turn green. Onyx and pearls really stayed that smoky plum till probably July, August for me, so I really like that. I'm using that more and more. A hardy begonia with the red undersides, or using leaves like on Macadamia crimson fans, which has this scalloped, really big leaf with the burgundy red on the outside. Very, very pretty. And if it wasn't for Hardy Plant Society, I wouldn't have propagated that. When I opened my garden first time 5 years ago, so many people asked me about this. I said, but it doesn't have a flower. And but anyway, so yeah, so now I propagate that too. Yeah. A hydrangea that ages to a deep crimson. It's really a beautiful, beautiful hydrangea. And then one of my favorite shrubs is calycanthus, or sweet shrub, native to the eastern US. In the wild, you would see it with like lighter colored flowers and smaller flowers. But this cultivar is Aphrodite, and it is amazing. For me, there's some older ones that have these large magnolia-like blooms, but this one is a bigger, longer blooming version with this burgundy bloom. Blooms 3+ months, right in the middle of summer, where you just want that beautiful effect. It's big though, 7 feet by 7 feet. Okay, last couple things. A few exotic plants. This is the one we gave away, Angelica ebony. I love Angelica because they're plum umbrals on top. The flowers are so striking and the bees love it. This little cherry drumsticks has 2-inch round balls of flowers, and it's only maybe 18 inches tall. Really hard to find. It took me a couple years to find a reliable seed source, because I would buy it and it would turn out to be the wrong plant. Interesting with seed sources, and then angel's fishing rod, or diorama, with these wands of bellflowers. And then lastly, those were little fun surprises for the most part. These are big fun surprises. These plants get big. This is the rheum that I showed you, the ornamental rhubarb from a slide earlier, with the 6-foot-tall pink or red flower spikes. You can see how vivid the color is when they first come out. And these beautiful jagged architectural leaves. Jerusalem sage with its little whorls of yellow all the way up. I call it a Dr. Seuss plant. Cardoons, relative to artichoke. Big, beautiful architectural leaves. And finally, on the lower right is an orange butterfly bush called orange balls. It gets these 1-inch, perfectly round little orange balls all over it, but also big. That's next to a house there. So 10 to 15 feet tall and wide. Okay, it was a crazy ride through this presentation. Thank you so much for your patience. Whether you've been to our garden or haven't, I hope I can tempt you to come out one more time. We close for the season. Our last day is October 12th. The garden is looking amazing. So we will hopefully see you out at the plant sale, and thank you very much.